Welcome to O Talkin' with Dave. Put your hands together for the pastor of positivity whose glass is always at least half full. Here's Dave.
Hey, how we doing out there? I hope you're great. I'm top shelf, as is usually the case. Before I get going today, I haven't gone over stats in a while, so I thought, I'm not going to take a lot of time, but I'm proud of these. I'm proud of you guys. I'm going to name the top 10 countries where O-Talks are listened to. And it's right now we're 40 countries across the globe, 314 cities. This is as of yesterday. But number one, of course, the USA. Fantastic. Yay, USA, USA. But get these. This blows my mind. Number two, the Netherlands. Number three, Singapore. Singapore is shooting up the list. It's fantastic. Down under with Australia. Good day. Number four. Then the fifth is United Kingdom. I think they listen in their British accents and they judge me. I think that's what. No, I appreciate it. My goodness, they're number 5 on the list. This one blows my mind. Number 6, Japan. They love me. I'd love to go there. I should do a remote. That'd be fantastic. I'd probably be the tallest person there. And then France, parlez-vous, français. Ukraine, I don't know. I think I should talk more about peace over there. Notice Russia's not on the list, although they're further down. They're not in the top 10. And then Canada. Oh, with all of their metric bacon and, give me a break. But so proud, number 9. And then rounding out, number 10, South Africa. I appreciate it so much. I really do. Everybody listening, it's cool. And I get emails from around the world. That's a beautiful thing about an email. It can come from anywhere. David@otalks.com, David@otalks.com. Hit me. Let me know. South America, nothing in South America. That is the only continent, really, where I have no listeners. So call somebody in South America and tell them to start O-Talking with Dave. Okay, enough of that. I just wanted to share that because I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much. So we're in October. Giddy up. I love October. It's usually the time of year where, a bit of a transition. I know when I growing up in the South, that's when the leaves started turning. Love that. My kids called them Fruity Pebbles. We lived in Chattanooga and we come around the corner and boom, there's all the leaves. So I love this time of year. But also I love Halloween. Love it. I love everything about it. Candy, free candy. It's growing up as a kid, even when my sisters would take me trick-or-treating when I was too young to go, and then I get a little older and me and John are all over the place on our bicycles, trick-or-treating. Fantastic. And now I've lived in several cities, and we usually go down to Fremont at some point on Halloween when the kids quit coming by. And I've been in New Orleans on Halloween. I've been in New York on Halloween. Of course, San Diego. But I've been on Fremont and Vegas on Halloween. And really, it's not different than any other night because it's always crazy. But I love Halloween. The thing around Halloween, though, is it's all about scary and all that stuff. It's not so much anymore, but it was all about the monsters and goblins and ghosts and all that stuff. There was a fear aspect. So I thought I'll talk about fear. We've got some people out there in different degrees to which fear is playing a role in their life. And I don't mean phobias, fear of something. And fear it can be very silent. It's a silent thief that robs you of your happiness or your peace. Of course, I like to say it robs you of your productivity. And even relationships. Fear it's a thief, and it controls people at different times more than others, and different people drastically more than others. But people if they live afraid of what they know, they also live in fear of what they don't know. And then the third thing is they imagine things to be afraid of. So that's tough. And think about it. You know where you are in that spectrum. But most of the time, the fear is worse than the thing itself. It's worse than what they are afraid of, that feeling, that crippling feeling. And so what am I talking about? Let's just name off some of them. And some of these come from research to where they're actual fears. I'm not just bringing these up. And again, these aren't phobias. But according to a survey, it's a Gallup poll, the most common fears that are disrupting people's lives, and now it's a fear of their own economic instability, whether it's their money, but also how is inflation going to affect their money. Retirement would play into that. How is the economy, which they can do very little, if anything, about, how is that putting fear in their lives? A lot of them, again, government corruption or the collapse of a government. We're on a 24-hour news cycle, and when I say news, propaganda. However, it is 24 hours worth of propaganda. And countries across the world a few years ago, look how Greece, their economy collapsed. Immediately, that throws fear into some people, depending on where you are in your life. If you're about to retire, if you've got a nest egg, if you've put all your chips on the table, or you're just starting out, how does this impact you? What fears does that bring up? A lot of people they have a crippling fear of getting sick or having health problems. I'll pause right there. I've shared my feelings around dementia, something later in life. I have a fear of that. It's not crippling. I try to do things about it. Some of it is an inevitability. But really, my fear around that illness, should I go down that route, it's not a fear that it will happen to me. It's a fear of the fallout from that, the burden to my kids. My burden that my father and my mother's illnesses late in life, that's not a big deal because I didn't suffer as much as others did as far as taking care of them. And it's not about me. I don't want to cause any of that suffering for my kids. So when I saw this on the list at number 3, illness or health problems, never would have considered it. However, now I do. So that's why this is an ever-changing list for each of us personally. Some people fear crime or violence against them. Man, I've walked down some crazy streets. I've been mugged. I got mugged in New Orleans one time. That's a total different story. Partially my fault. However, yeah, but I still don't fear that. Some people will not go out after dark. Some people will not go to certain areas. Now, you need to be street smart, but you also don't need to be crippled with a fear. And when I say you don't need to be, I'm not saying don't be afraid. I'm saying don't put yourself in a situation where that fear will manifest itself. And also don't be afraid of something that's imagined. However, it is real and it's out there. Some people fear losing a loved one. There are times if something had happened to me, there are several people who would have been in bad shape, not only emotionally, crippled, but what would they do? Financially, support-wise, all of this stuff. So fear of losing a loved one for all the reasons that might happen. That's number 5. Number 6 would be fear of failure in business or a career. And that fear could be reputation, it could be financial, it could be future endeavors, all of that stuff. A very real fear. I remember interviewing a very good person one time, turned out to be a top performer. And I asked, what motivates you? Which is a common interview question. What motivates you? And they said fear. And I said, tell me more about that. Oh, fear of failing. Fear of not hitting the levels I need to hit. Fear of not measuring up in my mind or in your mind if you're my boss. And I said, and that drives you? It's not a negative? Oh, no, that drives me. That was a great answer. You dig in a little more and it's, okay, what kind of fear of failure? Is it a crippling fear of failure? To this particular lady, no, it was a motivator. Oh, that was cool. But some people, it is a crippling fear of failure. Some people are absolutely horrified of natural disasters or climate events. I've got people in my family who have been horrified and a crippling fear of tornadoes. Yeah, they had been in one early in life. And so that, my goodness, in the South, you have them all the time. And the drama behind and they start talking about it, they ramp it up. They'll scare the crap out of you in the South with their weather people around tornadoes. I know people who wouldn't come west when we would have different events if there had been an earthquake recently. Nope. Scared to death. Yet they live in an area that has all kinds of other natural disasters. But nope, that earthquake, that's that one thing. So some people live in fear of that. And then others are absolutely horrified and paralyzed by the thought of being embarrassed in public or public speaking or any of the fallout of that. It can be, I guess it could be shyness, but it's a fear almost tied back to fear of failure. That embarrassment would be, that's what they're afraid of. Then a lot of people now, number 9 is a real fear that technology is going to replace their job. AI, baby. And that's real. But what do you do? And that's why we're going to talk to how do you prepare for some of these things? And sometimes you can't. So what do you do? And then the last one on the list of the top 10, and understand this is top 10. I don't know the details of the poll, how many people they talked about, but number 10 was fear of loneliness or abandonment. Yeah, that's very real. I don't have either one of those, and I'm glad. However, and I have been alone and abandoned before. It wasn't that bad for me. It was a break. But some people, horrified. You look at different times in your life where that would not have been the case with me. But that it's not about me. It's about the overall people. So that's a lot of fear out there. 83% of U.S. adults admit that worry and stress, my expertise here, about future things, future events, their future, impacts their daily lives. 83% worry and stress about the future impacts their daily lives. Does that hurt? Does that sting? Wow. And as I look at some of these things and I'm more introspective, I'm not stress-free and worry-free and carefree, so I'm in there somewhere. But 83% every day, the future brings fear to them. Oh, that's rough. 40 million adults suffer from clinical anxiety in the U.S. In the U.S. alone, 40 million. What are there, 300 million? So more than 10% suffer from clinical anxiety. And fear-based stress costs U.S. businesses, and here's where I come in, an estimated $300 billion in annual lost productivity. Productivity. That's the game, man. Personal productivity. Stress is causing businesses $300 billion a year in lost productivity. So it's real. It's very real. Think to yourself now, is this something that plays a role in your life? How big of a role does it play? And it does change over time. Things that have increased as far as fear goes, economic fears, health and anxiety, cybercrime, climate concerns, don't get me started, political instability, all this stuff. Think about it now. We're bombarded constantly, whether it's on TV or on the radio or on social media, or just people talking about it. Getting away from it is almost impossible all of the time. It's going to creep in. But those things are where fears have increased. Things that used to be on the top list, it's decreased. There used to be, I remember when I was a kid, the fear of a nuclear war. It still exists. There's still that fear out there, but it's not like it was in the Cold War era. Pre 80s, during the 80s or 70s, definitely that fear of nuclear war. They'd have blackouts on cities, and they would have all sorts of drills in schools just in case nuclear war. Think about disease and health, polio and smallpox. There was a huge fear of that 50 years ago. But with vaccines, and this isn't a vaccine talk, but with vaccines and things, they're almost eliminated. They're very rare. You see them in different parts of the world that are not developed. That used to be a real fear. And another one that used to be top 5, fear of flying. Yeah. Now commercial travel is so normal now. I have a fear of not flying. But those were the big ones. Now it's more specific. Yeah. Some of the new fears to dig in a little more, that cybersecurity. I've had my identity stolen. I've been a part of companies who've had that ransomware and all of their data taken hostage. I've been a part of a couple of companies that way. Now that is a real fear, but just from a personal standpoint, man, I can't tell you how many times my credit cards have been frauded. My identity stolen to some degree. It's real. It's accessible. And you know how you can tell that it's very prevalent? There's so many commercials about how to get it stopped or how to protect yourself. So it's real. AI, we talked about that, about job displacement. It's new, but it's not going to slow down. It's not. Matter of fact, it is doubling constantly. Just when you get used to one, they come out with another one as far as technology. And some of the talk and the conspiracy theorists talk about, it's when it takes over. When it takes over, it may already have. I don't think we'll know when it's taken over. I'm not worried about it, and I'm not afraid of it. Cybersecurity, I do what I can, but I don't sit around wringing my hands afraid of it. AI, I'm embracing it as much as I can, and I set my existence more on personal contact. I am not a robot. I promise you. A robot. I'm not AI. AI wouldn't look or sound like this. I can promise you. Yeah. Ask all those people in Singapore. They're getting a kick out of it. Social media around that, and by that I mean that real fears are around judgment or cancel culture and how that's going to work, and self-image and all of that. How exhausting would that be if you're afraid of all those things? You have to watch every word. You have to measure up. But that's new. What was it? 13, 15 years ago when social media really got going, really kicked off strong. It's created a whole new set of fears. Much more than polio. I can promise you that. Then the whole climate change and environmental collapse. You're hearing less about that. That emperor has lost his clothes quite a bit. However, there are still people. That's one of their biggest fears, and they think that's more important or more of a threat than terrorism or any of our foes. And then I heard this the other day. Pandemics. Pandemics have been around for a long time. The way we reacted to the last one, that'll scare anybody, that we are capable of that type of response, and how we totally changed worldwide conditions. We ruined a lot of lives, a lot of businesses, some cultures. And so people are afraid of that. Now, when we talked about it, we talked about things that have happened that we don't want to happen again, the things that could happen that we're afraid of, and then things that we imagine. So you can see someone who is susceptible to fear. All three of those are real. And when we talk about things that have happened, it's not necessarily to that person who is afraid. If it happened to them, it can happen to me. So we're afraid of something that happened to them. Of course, that's looking at the future, and then our imagination goes crazy. So it's tough. Fear is real. And we're going to talk about some ways to overcome it and live without it as much as possible. But many times, you have no choice what you're afraid of. The choice comes is when you decide how and when to deal with it. But fear disrupts people's lives, and it's real. I'm getting the stories why people aren't doing the things that they want to do. And a lot of it is around fear. So let's hit 5 ways that fear disrupts your life. Some people, it paralyzes them. It keeps them from taking a risk or trying new things or even speaking up. They've got a different view. I know people who have the answer. They have the answer to whatever the question is. Maybe an idea at work. Maybe a solution to a social problem or a personal problem with somebody in the group. And they don't speak up because they're afraid. What are they afraid of? Well, it's almost like the public speaking thing. They don't want to embarrass themselves. They don't want to be ridiculed because it was a bad idea. So many times. And if they don't say something, they just hope somebody else will say it. But they don't because they're paralyzed by fear. It's tough, man. That's rough. We got to get past that. Then other ways is stress and health issues, how fear disrupts your life. Chronic fear, it raises your cortisol, and that can lead to health problems. It hurts your immune system. It can cause you not to be able to sleep. It can cause insomnia. When you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. So chronic fear, if you're afraid of everything or afraid of some things and haven't learned to deal with it, it's going to make you sick. That's strong. And we talked about the $300 billion in lost productivity. Most of that comes from procrastination. Productivity loss, when it's fear, is usually procrastination. And it wastes hours. And sometimes it wastes opportunities you can't get back. And that opportunity would have moved you or your team or your company or your golf game or what, it would have moved it along. But fear made you pause or not do it at all. Huge productivity loss. Another thing, more personal, relationships. Fear can break a relationship. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, it makes people withdraw. Honestly, it creates the very thing that they're afraid of. People will withdraw, and if you're worried about rejection or abandonment, when you withdraw because you're afraid, you accelerate the chances or the occurrence of that happening. Ironic, don't you think? And then fear leads to, in most cases, I'll say, poor decision making. Choices made in fear often are rushed or irrational or push you to avoid or procrastinate those decisions that you make. It's tough. That's why you need planning. You need to make these decisions. You need to do some of the things we're going to talk about in a minute. But a rushed decision oftentimes is a poor decision because it's not based on a true, rational, conscious decision. It's a knee-jerk. It's a fear. It's a flight. Let's flee. So that's being afraid. I remember when I was young, I didn't like loud noises. You talk about true ironic. I think it was because we'd go to my granddad's, Papa's basement. I remember one time we'd go down there, he got a new chainsaw and he cranked it up down there and it was close quarters and it was so loud. And I wasn't expecting it. Scared the crap out of me. And I just remember I wasn't prepared for it and it was horrible. And for the longest, I didn't like loud noises. Now I'll stand in between two speakers at a show. That's why I always have this humming in my ears. And it was crippling. I didn't even want to go to the basement anymore after that happened for a while, which was horrible because I loved the basement. But things like that sometimes are thrust upon us and it shapes us in some way as to what we're afraid of in the future. A lot of them are realistic. Scary movies. Celery scares me. But there's a lot of things, and sometimes we're conditioned to be afraid, and then sometimes we're afraid that we're going to be afraid. Some people love to go to the spook houses at Halloween. It's that time. I noticed they're advertising here, haunted car washes. I'm going to one. I don't care. My car needs washing anyway. But they find a way in thriller movies, slasher movies, suspenseful movies, are some of the most loved. And then after that, now you're afraid in public because of things you saw in a movie. Crime shows are over the top, especially with women. We've talked about that. But they watch that and nothing good happens. Forensics means there's a dead body. Yet we love that. We are drawn to it. So it's almost we have a thirst for things we should be afraid of. But that has to shape activities that we may or may not do because of it. Yeah, it's a twist. It's a twist. So, what are some ways to overcome fear? Finally, Dave. I was afraid you wouldn't get to that. Sometimes I just do this for me. In Singapore. Anyway, let's talk about it. And this is true in many things when you're trying to deal with something in particular. You got to name it. First thing, what am I afraid of? And you got to be specific. Don't be I'm afraid of outdoors. No, be very specific, because when you single it or you single out fear or use the rifle approach or that specific fear, it shrinks. Fear shrinks when it's identified. You know something, write it down. Clarity, that clarity kills the vagueness. I am afraid of this. I am afraid that when I speak in public, I'm going to say something and someone is going to insult me or make fun of me, and I'm going to be embarrassed because I'm less intelligent or I appear to be less intelligent. Wow, that's specific. I'm fear of them seeing me as an idiot. Okay, that's not real, by the way, because I don't care. I don't care. However, that's what I mean by naming it and being specific. You're afraid to sing karaoke. Oh, you sing in the car, you sing in the garage, you sing everywhere. Why is that? It may be a specific thing about karaoke. Everybody in there is having a good time, but you may take your singing more seriously, and you want to be seen as a very good singer. Okay, maybe karaoke's not for you. Did you not see the last 3 drunks that got up there? However, name it. Name it. I don't want to date because I was hurt before, and I don't want to be hurt again. Okay, so you're afraid of that. Be very specific, and the fear will shrink. And then you got to challenge it. And the challenge in question is a fantastic one. What's the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? That question will get you through a lot. What is the worst? I always say, let's think positive, but what's the worst thing that can happen? 90% of fear never materializes. Never. That's my phone in the other room. I'm sorry. Very unprofessional. But what's the worst thing that can happen? What this does, it reduces the drama. Most of the time it's going to reduce the drama because the worst thing is not so bad. Get up there and sing karaoke. 3 minutes, it's over. And then when the next person gets up there, nobody even remembers. And everybody's going to be supportive. They're going to give you high fives even if you suck. But what's the worst thing that can happen? You know, what if I speak up in a meeting and have this idea? Somebody says, oh, that's a crazy idea. Someone else may take up for you. No, I was thinking the same thing. And then hit it again. Okay, here's my idea. That's a crazy idea. If we try it, what's the worst thing that can happen? That is a great question to ask. So identify the fear, challenge it. What's the worst thing that can happen? Maybe I'm just being dramatic here. And then take a small step. Confidence grows with these little victories. I work with people who get caught up in the moment and don't speak, like the one I said earlier. They had the answer, but they didn't speak up. So part of it is finding your voice, getting used to hearing your voice in an area. And so it may be something as simple as, for this particular fear of speaking up, Get your voice out there, and it can be in agreement. It can be you saying, good point. Oh, I like that. And you're hearing your voice. That breaks the ice. I know before I would sing and play the piano in church as a young tot, I would usually say something as an icebreaker because I wanted to hear my voice. It tested the mic, but I also knew if I said something funny and they laughed, okay, now I got some more confidence. So that small step gave me more confidence. Still to this day, I don't care what size the group is. I say, how y'all doing? With my southern accent, and I know right then who's with me and who's rolling their eyes. Either way, okay, it's a small step. Test the fear. I've got no talk coming up on untested faith. Oh, it's a good one. But also untested fear. If you don't test it, how are you going to overcome it? So take small steps and then reframe it. Reframe it. This isn't fear. This is just a type of energy. Fear is energy. Redirect it toward your preparation or your planning or your growth. Just like the lady I talked about earlier, where her biggest motivator is fear. Reframe it. Okay, I'm afraid of this, so I better work extra hard. I better plan meticulously. I better prepare so I'll be ready. I know what it is. I've named it. I've asked what's the worst thing that can happen. I've taken small steps by speaking up a little bit, maybe even volunteering to do this thing I'm afraid of. Now, let's use that energy to prepare. And then the best way, you build your confidence and your faith, and you build resilience. You're tough, man. You've got a community of positive people around you. People either want you to do well for your sake, or maybe you're part of a group. They want you to do well so the group does well. But through these steps that I've talked about, you've built a group that's cheering for you. You've built some habits that they're gonna eventually work. They may work now, but it's something to build on. And now you're focusing, though, on what you can control. Sometimes fear, you can't control it at first. But then you can take these 5 steps and control your reaction, shrink the fear, and now it's more manageable. It's not out of control. And this can be for anything. Any fear or any challenge that you face. And it's worth it. It is worth it. Being afraid is a terrible situation to be in. It really is. I don't like it when people are afraid because that's horrible. It's crippling. It's very defeating for all the reasons we said. So overcoming it or learning to deal with it, there are some glorious rewards. One of the main ones, freedom. I talk about freedom a lot. You stop being held hostage by the past or the future or your imagination. You have freedom from that now, and that cannot be overstated. With that, you have peace of mind. Your anxiety levels are down. I used to be afraid of that. I used to be afraid of the dark. I used to be afraid of the monsters under my bed. Okay, no, that doesn't bother me anymore, and that the anxiety levels have dropped. I sleep better. I'm healthier. I'm happier because I'm all right here. I don't have that something daunting that I'm afraid of because I've dealt with it. And I've got better relationships. I'm better, so people want to be around me. I'm confident, and people want to be around people that are confident. Why? Because I've faced my fears. Openness has replaced all that withdrawal, all that procrastination. Nope, let's go. I'm open to it. I'm more productive. That causes better relationships. And to go back to the productivity, that energy that I wasted on worrying and fear and stress, now I can put that energy toward getting it done, whatever it is, homework or play. Productivity and growth is happening. because I replaced the delay. I almost said decay, but it's the same thing when you think about it with fear. I've replaced that with that energy. And then finally, it lends itself to courage and influence. Courage is so important. It is seen. It helps as much externally as it does internally. But that influence, when you live with a fearless mentality, you inspire other people to do the same. If he can do it, I can do it. I remember one time Will and one of his friends, we were at a lake house, and Will's my son, and they were up on top of the boathouse, and they had a diving board up there, and it was like 10, 12 feet above the water. And Will and one of his friends were talking about, you go first. No, you go first. And Victoria, who's 2.5 years younger than both of them, just walks up right in between the middle of them and dives off this thing. And they looked at each other and said, we got to jump now. They weren't jumping. They weren't going first because there was some fear there. Okay, they saw her courage and her influence, and it's now we have to. And then they face their fear. Next thing, they're jumping off of it, no problem. How many times in our lives do we do things because, and this is in a good way, and it's not bad influence, how many times do we do something, we take a step, we face a fear because someone else did it? I've never jumped out of a plane, but it happens all the time. A lot of people go up and they don't, I don't know. And they almost back out, but then they go and they say, this thing I feared was one of the most enjoyable things in my life. That is a huge positive to overcoming your fear. Most of your fears, they either aren't going to happen or they aren't realistic to the degree to which you make them. Now, when I say that, I don't mean go unaccompanied into a bad part of town. Don't do crazy things. Don't take risks in a car, all of that stuff. No. What I'm talking about are these fears, those 10 things I said at the beginning, and others that they're making your life less than it should be. Remember how I started it? Fear is a thief. A silent thief many times, but you don't have to hand it the keys to your life. Fear loses its power when you confront it. Fear is a bully. It loses its power when you confront it, when you name it, when you refuse to let it set your boundaries for you. So a couple of things. This week, think of something that you're afraid of. And by afraid of, it's been holding you back. It's been holding you back. It's why you haven't done something that you feel like you either should do or something that would help you or something that's causing you stress or worry. Challenge it with the truth. No imagination here. So find it, write it down. This is what it is. It's holding me back. It's keeping me from something. I'm afraid to do this because of this. And then do one small action. Do it though. Don't think about it. Think about it and do it. Because that delay gives it strength. That action makes it shrink. Make that call. Send that email. Make that appointment. Send that text. Set something up. Break the ice. Take that first step. This week, do that. Think of it and then act on it. You don't overcome fear by waiting for the courage. Not at all. That's not how you do it. You overcome fear by acting in spite of that fear. Happiness and peace and productivity, they're all waiting on the other side. And you're going to find most of the time, it's just that monster under your bed. Yeah. So I hope this helps. Fear is crippling. It's real. You got to face it. Face your fear. What is that? No fear and fearless and all these things thrown out there. It's real, but it can be broken down. So I hope this has helped in some way, you addressing your fear. Those that have reached out, I appreciate it. We can always remember it because we never know what's coming next that could cause us pause or fear in some way. All right. Hit me up, david@otalks.com or david@otalks.com. I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate everything. All the lists of people I said earlier across the world listening to little old me. Woo-hoo. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for hanging on. And thanks for talking with Dave. Giddy up.